What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Snowcast Sports Talk Podcast, episode 24. Guys, we actually got a couple interesting stories to go over today. It's been a little bit since we've done an episode. Again, we're kind of on that summer droop of just not a lot happening, waiting for training camp to come. 1 month away from the preseason. We're actually 69 days away from the first NFL game, the NFL Sunday. But, yeah, we got a ton of stuff to talk about. But before that, Josh, how we doing?
Doing fantastic, my man. We've got some really interesting news to talk about, so yeah, let's get in.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, first big story, guys, was I think we've been seeing over the past couple of months since Joe Shane's been hired, we keep getting more and more realization that he's really in charge of this team. I mean, we haven't seen something like this. I can't remember since the last time of one guy really getting to make his say that isn't in with John Mara. And Chris Mara, who was let me get the exact title correct here, he was the Senior Vice President of Player Personnel, has now been removed off the Giants website without any announcement that now he is just a Senior Personnel Consultant. So that's actually really big news. Chris Mara is the younger brother of John Mara, who is one of the two owners of the New York Giants. So yeah, Josh, how you feeling?
Get him out of here. Look, if he hasn't been like
Up to
awesome
par.
in the past, if he hasn't been up to par, then who cares if he's his brother of whoever what? Then he shouldn't be there. We should have somebody that can bring in the success. I think the track record speaks for itself. Nothing like personal against him, but it's like, look, we're going through a lot of changes here in the staffing in New York Giants, and things are looking great. So if we can kind of distance ourselves from the old Giants, then let's do it.
Totally, and you made a good point there. It's not personal, but the kind of the proof is in the pudding. And Giants fans, and we all know this, Giants fans over the past 10 years and really the past 4 years have really been really hard on Chris Mara. Being a senior vice president of player personnel is basically one of the lead draft analysts and one of the lead draft decision makers. And one of the reasons teams in the NFL find themselves in bad situations is because of bad drafts. And I think we've been plagued with that over the past couple years. Some standouts to me would start with Eric Flowers and Eli Apple, who are both no longer on the team. And then some players on the team. I want nothing but the best for Saquon, but I will be very open that I thought that was a mistake choice at number 2. And I think we've paid the price for it ever since. And again, I'm really rooting for Daniel Jones, but if someone held a gun to my head right now and said, was he the right pick at number 6? I would say no. We have not gotten to where we need to be with him. And Chris Mara was a very big influence on all of those picks and a lot of our scouting process too. So, we saw Joe Shane get rid of, I think his name was Chris Pettit, a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now. We talked about it very briefly here on the podcast, but he was let go after the draft. And then I think, this being the owner's brother, I think this decision maybe needed a little more discussion. How do you think that conversation went, Josh? Do you think Joe Shane went to John Mara and said, hey, I think we have to move your brother into a different position?
I think if I'm just gonna have to guess, I'm assuming that John is the one that made this decision. I'm assuming John was like, hey, I really love what's happening here. I love the energy, and
It's time for change.
maybe there's a time for the change, and maybe it was a bit of both, and maybe Joe went up to John and said, oh, we have this person that we know is really, really good at, doing this particular job in the draft or whatever, draft selection and scouting or whatever. And so that's maybe when John was like, yeah, maybe we should get rid of my brother and let's give him the keys. Let him kind of do what his thing is. So,
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, I think, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that makes sense to me. I think it's definitely probably a collaboration. I'm sure Joe was in John's ear a little bit about it. And, maybe seeing the process. And, this draft process felt different to me. The Giants of old would not have taken a Kayvon Thibodeau. Two big character issues. That would have been, that was, I mean, literally that was what a lot of these, Giants content creators and Giants community members and Giants fans thought, was there's no way we're taking Kayvon. That was one of my biggest fears, was we're not taking Kayvon. Because of the character problem, because Dave Gettleman, the previous GM, he talked about that a lot. When he came in, he thought the Giants had a character issue with Landon Collins and Odell Beckham and Eli Apple, and so that was the big thing they fixed. So when these hit pieces came out on Kayvon, a lot of people thought the Giants would distance themselves from it. So it felt
hit pieces. I don't know of them.
So just before the draft, Kayvon started falling. I don't know if you remember when we did our analysis video. I talked a little bit about this guy's not going to fall to us, but he could because of these slanderous hit pieces coming out on him that his character isn't high enough. At the end of the season, he didn't play really hard because there was nothing to play for. And sort of stuff like that, just character assassination pieces. And they aren't true, obviously. I don't believe they're true. But what happens in the past is the Giants would just, having such a high pick and so many great players at your pick, don't even take the guy that could chance the character problems, even if potentially he has a higher ceiling. But I guess the point I'm making is when they took Kayvon, it was kind of a red flag to me that maybe Chris Mara wasn't as involved in the decision-making process as before. So, yeah.
That sounds like a load of crap to me. I mean, I don't see any issue with Kayvon.
No, and of course not. But you don't see character issues until things start going bad. Odell was the sweetheart of New York until we started losing a ton of games. Then he was kicking nets and fighting players on the field. So Kayvon hasn't had that opportunity. I really hope he's as mature as I think he comes off, and I have faith he is. This podcast, Josh, is a Kayvon support group. We all support Kayvon Thibodeau here. But, we haven't had a chance to see him.
I mean, hey, the moment he loses face and loses, what I mean is the moment he loses his character and he starts acting like a spoiled kid, I'm gone.
I mean, people.
I'm not here to be.
I mean, people.
Because.
Yeah, people have bad days, and I think that's totally fine. But I'm just saying, Kayvon was not a normal Giants pick, and for any Giants any tenured Giants fan, let me know down below if you agree with that, because I just felt like an Evan Neal would have been the safer pick at 5, where it's like, oh man, this guy's personality is perfect for New York. He's quiet, he works, and that's what he does. But the Giants had players like Lawrence Taylor and Michael Strahan, who were amazing edge rushers with huge personalities. So all that being said, I think, it's just really, I think the final piece is giving John Mara, the owner, some credit for having the guts to tell his brother, either Joe Schoen influenced or influenced by him, hey, you're my brother and I love you, but for the sake of this team that has been struggling, we need to make some changes.
And then I wonder, what would be a real curveball?
What's up?
If this was Chris's idea. It's like, that would be a curveball, right? Like, hey, maybe what if he's just stepping down because he doesn't feel like doing the job, and then we're making some story,
You know what? That's why we have you here, Josh, because that is just as likely. No one knows, and all the hate Chris has gotten within the Giants fandom could absolutely be something.
Yeah, so I mean, that could be part of it. It's just that maybe he was like, some people are incredibly honest with themselves. I'm not saying he is, but some people, he could be like, oh, you know what? I haven't been doing a very good job. I should give somebody else a chance to do this job because I'm not doing very well. I'm going to step back.
Or even just seeing the changes, seeing a young Joe Schoen who has again, the Giants really love to hire people who have affiliation with the Giants. So when we hired Dave Gettleman in 2017, he was with the Giants for the 2007 and 2011 Super Bowl. So there was almost like that romantic homecoming of Dave Gettleman coming back now as the general manager. He wasn't the general manager in the past. He was part of player personnel and scouting. But either way, maybe Chris Mara looked around and said, man, this is just not the same vibe. Maybe I need to step back, Joe Schoen is doing his thing and everything seems to be working out. I don't believe that, but maybe.
Well, nobody knows.
Yeah, no one knows. But the one thing we do know is it's probably a change for the better. Getting some new, fresh faces in here, is the best thing the Giants can do right now, because whatever we've been doing in the past was not working. So change is welcome, and we're all good with it. And I'm very, very confident in Giants ownership after this offseason. So, any closing thoughts?
Get him out of here.
Get him out of here. You want to lead us into our next topic?
Yeah, sure. So recently, there was some interesting like snippet that Will and I saw of Tiki Barber on a like little podcast type thing where he received a call from Michael Strahan, and Strahan was talking to him and saying, maybe we'll have the link in the description.
Yep.
But Strahan was like, oh, hey, um, I'm really liking what I'm seeing here from the coaches, because the coaches are actually contacting us veteran players and asking us for advice and asking us for help and stuff, which that wasn't always the case in previous regimes. And Coach Dable called me. This is Strahan saying this. He's like, Coach Dable called me and asked for what's
Jimmy
his
Johnson.
name? Jimmy Johnson's number, and so I gave him my number. And so it turns out that Coach Dable called Strahan to ask for Jimmy Johnson's number because he wanted to talk to Jimmy Johnson and just kind of pick his brain and
about being a head coach and all that
about
good
being
stuff.
a head coach and all that. So I think that's a pretty big deal. It's like, hey man, our coaches are reaching out to people that are already very successful, like Jimmy Johnson, to try and get a better understanding. And then after that, after he gave away the number, and a little while later, Jimmy Johnson texted Michael Strahan and said, hey, you know what? I think the Giants are in good hands. I got a chance to talk with Brian Dable, and I really like what I'm hearing. You know what I mean? I like what I'm seeing. I think they're going to be in really good hands. So
That's
here
awesome.
you go. So this good energy that everybody's feeling, the fans and the players and all of that, us, that we're saying we're feeling something in the air. Well, it's not just us. The veteran players like Tiki Barber, Michael Strahan,
and the coaches,
retired players, and the coaches even, are saying, hey, man, this looks different. This looks good. This looks awesome. So
no, it's I feel like in the off season, I feel like we rotate through stories, and a lot of it is conversation about what's upcoming, and I always find myself needing to catch myself and saying, hey, they've done things I've really liked. I wanted Brian Dable and Joe Shane. I wanted Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, those were literally like my number one things before they happened. But, to hear someone like Jimmy Johnson, who Jimmy Johnson was an NFL coach in the 80s and the 90s, wins a couple Super Bowls and is now one of the best announcers in the NFL and watches it every week, for him to have a conversation with Brian Dable and have those remarks, I think speaks volumes more than what we've talked about before. And Jimmy Johnson was never affiliated with the Giants. He was a Cowboys head coach. He was a rival of ours. But Jimmy Johnson is one of these guys that, and Strahan talked about this, Peyton Manning, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, these guys go down to Florida and visit Jimmy and spend some time on his boat and just pick his brain about being a leader and leading men and all this stuff. So to hear Jimmy have those things to say about Brian Dable, and to have Brian Dable take the initiative to reach out to Jimmy, is really, really cool. And, just cements a little bit further, things feel different. I think that's the best way to put going into this season. Michael Strahan said right at the beginning of that snippet too, wins and losses doesn't matter. Things feel different.
Yeah, and I feel less and less like we're crazy for thinking this, because part of me thinks like, oh, are we just kind of blowing things out of proportion, just like how we did with the last time, with the last regime? We're like, oh man, things are different. We're gonna have a big season.
You should have heard me with Joe Judge. You should have heard me last year, going into last year.
Yeah, so I'm like, are we
Josh,
just falling into the same trap?
Josh, just listen to this for a second. Last year, we go into it. We finished the year before 6-10. We were one game away from going to the playoffs, and then we sign an all-star cornerback in Adoree Jackson, and we get a number 1 wide receiver in Kenny Golladay. And Joe Judge proved to be a pretty good head coach his first year. Josh, we went into last season. Our expectations were so high. We thought we were a playoff team. Keep going. I just wanted to cement that home of the hype was real last year.
Yeah, and so part of me is a little worried about getting overhyped.
Me too.
I'm worried.
Still
Like,
scares
am I
me.
getting overhyped right now? Am I gonna be like, oh shoot,
We suck.
4-4 yeah,
4-13. We suck.
4-13.
Which a lot of people outside of the Giants community, shout out to my dad. I spent the weekend with him, and he told me Giants will be the worst team in the division. So
Wait, what?
he told me Washington, Dallas, and Philly will have better seasons in the NFC East. So
This coming season?
but the point I want to drive home is some people still don't think the Giants will be good.
Nobody. I feel like we're sleepers right now.
Oh, huge! If we had a good year next year, that would be breakout.
Yeah, everybody be like, "Whoa, we never saw this coming."
It's
well,
true.
We freaking did. We've been putting it on our podcast
every week.
I know.
But
there's something going on, man. And I'm not saying we're gonna freaking like make the playoffs. I'm saying it's not gonna be the same. It's gonna be like, who knows, 8 wins,
9 wins, yeah, or even
9.
just close, competent games. Not QB sneaking on second
not
and 10.
beating ourselves up. None of that. Tripping on an 80-yard run right before the touchdown.
There might still be that. Daniel Jones is still the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing in Strahan, he started with, and me and Josh, we were talking before the podcast, kind of just going through the script a little bit. Things have just been hectic with the holiday, like we talked about before. Job change, I'm moving in a couple weeks. Just things are kind of crazy. So we were catching up. I made a comment to him. I said, with all these players being in the Giants facility, it's not that insane for me to see. I vividly remember Joe Judge bringing in Chris Sims, who's the son. Oh no, not is it Chris Sims? It was his dad, Phil Sims, the quarterback who won us the 1990 Super Bowl, and a couple other players. I want to say Justin Tuck. They were in the building, and I remember seeing it on Instagram. So I thought Brian Dable and Shane doing it was kind of, you doing the same thing, which I didn't think it was a bad thing, but I was like, nothing's changed here. Like, Joe Judge was doing this. This isn't what's going to be the differentiator between Dable and Judge. But Strahan said, when we came in last year, it was very specific what they wanted us to do. And when even you watch the videos, it was like, hey, do a PowerPoint presentation, talk to the team at the end of practice, give us a hype speech. But what Strahan said this time around, it's a little interesting, is they're just there. So Dable and Shane will say, can you just come to practice and be there for the day? And kind of give the players, which is a lot of young guys, more of an accessibility to maybe some of these veteran players who have found success in the NFL. And instead of giving like a pinpoint PowerPoint presentation, it's just, hey, I'm going to be here for the next 12 hours. I'll be having lunch. I'll be helping with some of the drills. Come over and talk to me. We can build a relationship. And it seems like for Strahan, he really liked that. Which, again, is a really cool thing to hear. And it's not something where it's like, oh, Brian Dable's way is the right way and Joe Judge's way is the wrong way. No, absolutely not. All I'm saying is it's just different, which is all I wanted coming out of last season, was change everything. Please change everything.
Yeah. I think this is all-round good news, the fact that Michael was so happy about the changes.
And Tiki, too.
And Tiki, too.
And those guys hated each other, by the way. They had a lot of feuds back in the early 2000s. So
the early 2000s.
Yeah, well, when the Giants won their Super Bowl in 2007 and 8, Tiki retired the year before. And then he became a TV analyst, and all he did was crap talk Eli Manning. So, just kind of interesting.
Gotcha.
Keep going, though.
Well, I didn't have more to say on that. I was going to go to the next point on the next topic, which is the last topic that we have.
Go for it.
Which is that the training camps will be started starting again here at the end of July, and it'll be open to the fans. So there will be open training camps,
which
um,
is the first time since COVID.
which is the first time in a long time since 2019 or early 2020, I guess.
No,
What would it?
2019. So 20.
Yeah, because COVID wasn't even a thing until the last day of 2019,
Yeah, yeah.
December
So yeah,
31st. So then it was like in 2020 is the
they shut
like there
down.
was
Yeah.
no there was no but so Wednesday, July 27th, from 10 a.m. to 11:30. So for an hour and a half on that Wednesday, July 27th, there will be an open practice, and it will be every day after that. So Thursday, Friday, and then some of the days, and this will go on for a few weeks, and it's open to the public to go, and some of the practices will be 2 hours instead of an hour and a half. There will be different events. Like one of the days, instead of it being in the morning, there's an event on a Friday, August 5th, from 6 p.m. to 8:30. It's called the Giants Fan Fest, presented by Wendy's. So
It's a huge, big
there's gonna
celebration. Yeah, it's
yeah,
really
like a
cool.
big celebration, yeah, and I'm sure there will be like content creators there that can make it that are close by.
Yeah, so I think the
So
confirmed ones are Talkin' Giants and then Chris the Entertainer, who've both been on this podcast and are all three of them are really, really great guys. And they do a bunch of cool things through John Boy Sports, which is kind of like the company that kind of helped create Talking Giants and stuff like that. So it's really cool. I think, having the fans there again, it's a really nice opportunity for people to come and build camaraderie, get to see the team a little bit, get signatures. It gets the players hyped up, I'm sure. I'm trying to think. I had something else I wanted to talk about. I didn't put it in the script, but now it escapes me completely. One of the interesting things, too, there was an interview that came out with Daniel Jones, and me and Josh talked about this, too, a little bit. Daniel Jones is kind of like milquetoast, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I prefer a quarterback that's not in the news for any other reason than playing football.
yeah.
But he's actually going to. They asked him. They said, "Are you excited to have your starting wide receiver lineup?" And I was like, "Why would that question?" And then I remembered Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney. They were all in red jerseys throughout the spring training. So now in training camp, they'll be able to actually be in live practices. And so Jones is really excited because he can build up some camaraderie with them. They can all get used to the playbook together. And Jones said, the most important thing for this team right now is snap count, getting as many snaps off as possible. So that'll be really good to have everyone there healthy and being able to practice together. Because I think that's the final piece.
Yeah, I'm really hoping, and I'm cheering for Jonesy. I really want him to like just do well this season, even though it's his last season, like on the contract wise.
Yep.
I really want him to do well. Um, so I don't know if I want a new coach. I mean, a new quarterback. Unless he just doesn't do well, then we got to get a new quarterback. So
I would love to
um,
not have to need a new one. That's always been another
yeah,
thing here. We want Jones to succeed, but we're honest about what he's done so far and what we've seen.
exactly.
But,
So
on that note, too, just as I guess a final thing is, we're going to have some different content coming up here in the future with the preseason coming up. So, it's going to be a really nice change of pace, guys. I just want to give a thank you to, people who have been sticking around and supporting. Well, me and Josh have just these very, not small, but very mundane news stories to kind of cling on to for Giants content. So, the next couple weeks, I think we might branch out a little bit, talk about the schedule some more and maybe some of the other teams we're going to be playing. But also, too, as this preseason comes up, me and Josh are going to be able to do a little bit of practice ourselves on reviewing some of the games, figuring out how we're going to watch them together, take notes, and then have things to review. So I think we only got maybe 3 more weeks or 4 more weeks until we get to that point. With that, I'm just excited for what's to come, and I appreciate everyone who's kind of stuck along, and you as well, Josh.
yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be a fun change of pace, and we'll
For
have
sure.
real football to talk about for finally. So
Yeah, absolutely. But on that note, everyone, want to thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you all next week, and go
go
Giants.
Giants.